Black Clover Chapter 363 is our clearest sign yet that when Lucius makes someone into a paladin, they get an enormous power up that should not be fair, because while Morgen and Damnatio were already pretty strong when they're alive, for someone like Morgen to be doing as well as he currently is against Yami is really impressive, especially given the fact that Yami is a lot stronger than Morgen would have previously seen him. Yet Morgen in this fight looks like he has the upper hand on Yami. We've really been seeing Tabata set the stage for a final showdown between each set of combatants here, and given the history between Yami and Morgen and the Black Bulls and Damnatio, each set of these battles that we're watching take place right now, this has potential for a lot of huge payoffs for both sets of characters after each battle reaches its conclusion. Though in the case of Yami, there might not be a true sense of payoff for that character until Yami gets to sink his fangs into Lucius, or rather try to sink his fangs into Lucius. So with my initial thoughts out of the way, let's back things up a bit and let's dive into the recap portion of the review. So the chapter opens up with Lucius talking to Yuno and continuing to play mind games with him. He says that he can see how very attached to Asta that Yuno is, but that doesn't matter how attached to him that he is, because Asta's dead, and even if by some miracle that Asta is alive, he's taken the appropriate steps to ensure that Asta never becomes a problem for him ever again, which is interesting because in a way that hints at a possibility that Lucius might have some vague connection to his paladins, because in his mind Asta should be dead, but he's leaving the door open for a small chance that Asta's actually alive and still able to disrupt his plans. Either this is Lucius being cautious, or this is Lucius hinting to the audience that he knows Asta's still out there, which begs the question of how did Lucius know specifically to send Danatio to the witch's forest of all places. It's then that the chapter changes things up and we get a scene over at the witch's force, and we see the witches carry on their counterattack against the newly powered up Danatio with a level of extreme desperation because they need to protect the witch's force from this invader. Damnatio quickly shuts things down for a brief period by using his scale magic, and he begins to go into his monologue stating that for the orderly world that Lucius is creating, the devil who interferes with these plans must be prevented. It's at this point we see more of those NPC angels show up and fire off a huge beam of mana at the location of the Black Bulls, where they gathered to summon Asta. We then shift over, this time to another battlefield where we see Yami versus Morgen. Just given the history between these two characters, going back to their time in the Great Deer, this becomes a highly emotionally charged battle, and it's one I'd be curious to see more of Yami's internal monologues, given his close relationship to Morgen. Morgen is written as playing on that relationship just a little bit. After he states that Lucius is aware of what's going on in the witch's forest, Morgen tells Yami it's best that they get reborn so they can protect the world, just as they had previously done in the past when they were part of the Great Deer. However, Yami stands his ground and lets it be known that he isn't living in the past. He's got his own squad that he's responsible for. We then switch back to Damnatio versus the Black Bulls, and we see that the ever so handy dandy trap magic has managed to counter a large beam of mana that was meant to strike the Black Bulls, and we see the Black Bulls preparing to go on to their counteroffensive, which leads to Damnatio declaring that the Black Bulls are a hindrance. And I don't blame him, because Zoro is out there acting like a Yu-Gi-Oh character, basically playing that magic cylinder trap card out of nowhere, which is another Zoro W, and that's something that you love to see. So with the recap portion done, let's back up and let's unpack the chapter even further, because there was a lot sprinkled in here for setup, including the potential of someone in the witch's force betraying the Black Bulls to Lucius. I think Tabata has sprinkled in hints that Asta is a bigger problem for Lucius than we might have initially thought, because we have him directly state that the people of the Clover Kingdom, or as he puts it, you people, are very attached to Asta, but that's why he took the steps to remove him and any possibility of him returning even when he was alive. For him, he was spooked enough that Asta might actually be alive out there that he sent Damnatio to the witch's forest to try and stop them from bringing Asta back, which is a sign that there's something else about Asta that has him worried. We all saw their first fight. Asta did his best to put up a good fight, but Lucius took him down all the same. There's no reason to think that Lucius couldn't have beat that version of Asta 10 times out of 10, which goes back to him targeting Asta first. There's something else besides Asta having anti-magic and having the effect that he has on the timeline. Something about Asta that scares him is something we don't know yet, where even if there's a slimmest chance he can be brought back, he does not under any circumstances want to take that chance. I think the other thing we can take away from this is that Lucius might have initially thought Asta was dead, but now he might have some reason to believe he's alive. alive, either directly through having some limited connection with this paladin, or more than likely the fact that 3 of his paladins were defeated over in the Land of Sun, which should not have been a foreseen possibility, because unlike the Clover Kingdom, where all these characters had met Asta and powered up much higher than they should have done in other timelines, to Lucius' knowledge, no one in the Land of Sun should even have a level of power that was needed to oppose his 3 paladins. He sent 3 for a reason. He wouldn't have sent them there unless he knew that they could win, which can only mean that this was the moment that Lucius began to suspect that Asta was indeed alive, because this is a blemish on the timeline that he saw. However, Lucius specifically stated that he made sure of Asta not being able to make it to the battlefield, which might be another key sign that Lucius knew specifically what they're trying to do, which should be impossible because he can't see anything related to Asta's future, so he shouldn't be able to see a situation where Asta would turn on the battlefield. This opens up the door for Lucius to have been informed by someone who is there, but I'm not sure Tabata would do that. But the fact that Lucius knows with absolute certainty that there might be something going on here in the Witch's Forest, and if it ends up being the case, this could shake the Black Wolves down to the core as we know them, and it makes you look at Noct for a reason. This is the very same chapter where Yami is shown fighting Noct's brother. Noct was also undercover at the Spade Kingdom for a while. There's a lot with Noct's character and his brother Morgan, including Noct's motivations. There's enough there where if you want to make that connection, you absolutely can, but I truly hope that this isn't the case, but I'm biased since I do love the character. We also have to look at the potential swerve that Tabata's cooking up at Damnatio, because he makes the reference to a devil, which very well likely could be Asta, but given the way that this arc is unfolding, this could be a double meaning, both Asta as well as to something else. The other thing that we have to keep our eyes on is the fact that while Yami is getting worked by Morgan, this could be setting the stage for what we were given towards the end of the war with the Spade Kingdom, where Gray mentions that Yami's heart is almost like that Alibe, a devil, and that he was filled with magic despite his injuries. And given that we've learned a lot about Yami's clan in the Land of Sun, and especially what happened with the waters over there and Yami's clan having the dark magic and everything else that we learned during Asta's time there, I do think there's a chance that we see Yami get an amp via a devil heart. Overall, despite this being a much shorter chapter than normal, I do appreciate what Tabata has given us in this chapter, especially in light of everything that he stated is going on with his family via his author comments on Weekly Shonen Jump, in particular with his wife. And I hope that this next break that Tabata is on is able to lead us to something that drops more fire as we march towards the final battle.